A poor little boy holding his twin sisters close, begged strangers for food. Not knowing the man he had just stopped was a wealthy CEO who would change their lives forever. One chilly morning, the streets were waking up slowly. The boy's name was Lam, just 9 years old, but the way he held the tiny hands of his 5-year-old twin sisters, Ella and Emma, made him seem much older. His clothes were worn thin, his shoes had long since given up on their duty, and his small frame shook from the cold. Still, he kept walking, because stopping meant thinking about how empty their bellies were. They had been out since dawn, moving from corner to corner, whispering polite, "Excuse me, sir," or "Mom, can you spare something to eat?" Most people avoided eye contact. Some looked through them as if they were invisible. Others simply shook their heads before hurrying away. Liam didn't blame them. In his short life, he had learned that the world was busy, and people carried burdens they didn't share. But today was different. He spotted a man in a dark overcoat, stepping out of a sleek black car in front of a coffee shop. The car doors closed silently, and the man's polished shoes clicked against the pavement. Liam didn't notice the car's luxury or the shine of his watch. He only saw someone who might have enough kindness to spare a sandwich. With Ella clinging to his left hand and Emma to his right, he walked forward. "Sir." Liam's voice was small, but it carried the weight of desperation. "Please, we're really hungry. Could you maybe give us something to eat?" The man stopped, looking down at the 3 small figures. For a moment, his face didn't change. He seemed unreadable, almost distant. Most people would have assumed he'd brush them off like the others. But inside, something in his heart shifted. This was Jonathan Hale, CEO of one of the most successful companies in the city. He had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, but his mornings were usually cold and mechanical, filled with meetings, deadlines, and transactions. Today, however, fate had placed 3 hungry children in his path. Jonathan crouched down to meet Liam's eyes. "What's your name, son?" "Liam," the boy replied softly. "These are my sisters." Ella gave a shy nod, while Emma hid her face against her brother's side. Jonathan noticed how tightly Liam's hands wrapped around theirs. Protective, almost like a parent. He didn't see just 3 children. He saw a story. One he wanted to understand. "All right, Liam," Jonathan said, his voice gentler now. "Let's get you something to eat." Liam's eyes widened. He wasn't used to quick yeses. He wasn't used to people stopping their day for him at all. As they stepped inside the coffee shop, the warmth hit them like a blanket. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the air. Jonathan ordered more food than the children could imagine eating at once. Sandwiches, pastries, warm milk. The twins hesitated at first, glancing at their brother for permission. Liam gave them a small nod, and they began eating with small, cautious bites, as if afraid the food might vanish. Jonathan didn't rush them. He simply watched, noticing every detail. How Ella occasionally pushed half of her share toward Liam, and how Liam would quietly slide it back to her. "Do you live around here?" Jonathan asked after a while. Liam looked down at his plate. "Not exactly." Jonathan understood what that meant: no home, no stable place. Just the streets, maybe a shelter when space was available. The more Jonathan looked at Liam, the more questions filled his mind. How long had they been like this? Where were their parents? What had happened to bring them here? But he didn't ask right away. He knew trust wasn't built in a single breakfast. When they finished, Jonathan asked, "Where are you headed now?" Liam hesitated. "Well, just walk until we find someone kind enough to help." Jonathan felt something heavy settle in his chest. This wasn't just hunger. This was survival. And he couldn't let it end with one meal. "Come with me," Jonathan said. Liam froze. His instincts told him to be careful. Strangers could be dangerous. But something about Jonathan felt different. Maybe it was the calm in his voice. Maybe it was the way he hadn't looked at them with pity, but with genuine concern. Jonathan led them outside, back toward his car. The twins' eyes widened at the sight of it, but Liam stayed quiet, holding their hands tightly. As they drove, Liam's curiosity got the better of him. "Why are you helping us?" Jonathan glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Because once, a long time ago, someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. And it changed my life." That was all he said. The car pulled up to a tall building in the center of the city. Jonathan stepped out, and the doorman greeted him with respect. Liam realized this man wasn't just well off. He was someone important. He had no idea that Jonathan was one of the most influential CEOs in the country. Inside, the warmth was overwhelming. The lobby was quiet, the air smelled clean, and the floor shined like water. Jonathan took them upstairs to his office, spacious, filled with books, and a large desk by the window. Jonathan knelt in front of the twins. "Would you like to stay here for a while? Just until I figure something out for you?" Ella and Emma nodded slowly. Liam still hesitated, but the warmth, the safety, and the quiet were like nothing he'd felt in months. Jonathan made a call. "Bring in some blankets, clothes, and a warm lunch for 3. As the children settled into the couch, Jonathan stepped aside, looking out the window. He didn't know why he felt so certain. But something told him this was the beginning of a story that would change not only their lives, but his too. And for Liam, this was the first morning in a long time, where he didn't have to worry about where the next meal would come from. The twins had fallen asleep on Jonathan's office couch, curled up under soft blankets. Liam sat on the edge, his small frame tense, his eyes darting between the glass walls and the massive city view beyond them. He wasn't used to silence like this, the kind where you could hear your own breathing. Out on the streets, there was always noisy footsteps, car horns, shouting. Here, it was almost too quiet. Jonathan watched him from across the room. The boy's wariness was obvious, but so was his strength. At 9 years old, Liam already carried the posture of someone who had been protecting others for a long time. Jonathan recognized that look. He'd worn it himself once. He stepped forward and spoke softly, so as not to wake the twins. "You can relax, Liam. You're safe here." Liam nodded but didn't move. His trust was a fortress with walls built high, and Jonathan knew better than to try to knock them down in a day. "Do you want to tell me how you ended up out there?" Jonathan asked gently. Liam's lips tightened. "It doesn't matter." Jonathan sat in the chair beside him. "It matters to me." There was a long pause. Liam stared at the city skyline, then down at his hands. His voice was barely above a whisper when he said, "We used to live with Mom. She got sick. We didn't have money for the hospital. She didn't make it." Jonathan felt a weight settle in his chest. "We stayed with some people for a while, but they couldn't keep us. Then we started walking, trying to find food. Sometimes shelters let us stay, but..." Liam's voice trailed off. Jonathan didn't press. He simply nodded, letting the boy's words hang in the air. He could tell Liam wasn't telling the whole story. There were pieces too painful or too private for a first conversation. That was fine. Trust took time. The office door opened, and Jonathan's assistant wheeled in a cart with steaming bowls of soup, fresh bread, and fruit. Liam's eyes widened at the smell, and his stomach growled loudly. Jonathan smiled. "Eat. As much as you want." Liam glanced at the twins, still asleep. "Can I save some for them?" Jonathan's throat tightened. "Of course." As Liam ate, Jonathan's mind was already racing. He had the resources to change their lives completely. But he also knew the dangers of overwhelming someone with too much too soon. If he simply handed them money, it wouldn't solve the deeper wounds. The lack of stability, education, safety, and trust. He decided on something else, something bigger. By the time the twins woke up, the afternoon sun had shifted across the skyline. Jonathan had arranged for a private driver to take them to a temporary apartment, warm, fully stocked, and close to his office. It wasn't charity in his eyes. It was a first step. When they arrived, the twins' reactions broke him. Ella gasped softly at the sight of the small dining table set for 3. Emma ran to the couch and touched it like it might disappear. Liam just stood still, taking it all in. Jonathan placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. "This is your home for now. But only if you want it to be." Liam looked at him, eyes filled with both hope and suspicion. "Why are you doing this? We're just no one." Jonathan crouched so they were eye level. "You are not no one. You're Liam. And you've been doing the job of an adult since you were a child. That's more than most people will ever understand. I'm helping you because I can. And because someone once helped me when I was lost. There was silence between them, but it wasn't cold. It was the kind of silence that said something had shifted. A seed of trust planted, even if it hadn't fully grown. That night, for the first time in months, Liam slept without fear of being woken by sirens, strangers, or the ache of hunger. The twins slept soundly beside him, their small breaths steady in the quiet. Jonathan, however, lay awake in his own home, staring at the ceiling. He had the feeling this wasn't just a good deed. This was going to change his life as much as theirs. And he had no idea how soon that change was coming. 2. Morning light streamed through the thin curtains of the small apartment Jonathan had arranged for them. The smell of fresh bread from the bakery downstairs drifted in through the window. Liam was the first to wake, as he always did, stretching quietly so he wouldn't disturb his sisters. Ella and Emma lay tangled together under the blanket, their tiny faces calm, a rare sight he wanted to protect forever. For a moment, Liam just stood there, unsure what to do. The space was warm. There was food in the kitchen. No one was telling them to leave. It felt unreal. And he didn't know how long it would last. A knock at the door made him jump. He moved quickly, standing between the sound and the twins until a familiar voice called, "It's Jonathan." Liam opened the door cautiously. Jonathan stood there with 2 large paper bags in his hands. "Breakfast," he said with a small smile. "And something else." The twins stirred awake at the smell, their eyes lighting up when Jonathan placed the bags on the table. Inside were warm muffins, fresh fruit, and 3 steaming cups of hot chocolate. Jonathan watched as they gathered around, the sound of their small laughter filling the room. After they had eaten, Jonathan pulled a small folder from his coat. "Liam, I wanted to talk to you about something important." Liam straightened, his shoulders tensing as if bracing for bad news. Jonathan noticed. "It's nothing bad," he reassured him. "I've arranged for you and your sisters to be enrolled in a local school. It's just a few blocks away from here. They'll make sure you have everything you need. Books, uniforms, lunches." The twins looked at each other in surprise. "School?" Ella asked, as if the word was something far off and unreachable. "Yes," Jonathan said warmly. "A place where you can learn, make friends, and just be kids." Liam hesitated. "We've never been in the same school for long. Sometimes they send us away when they find out." He stopped, not finishing the sentence. Jonathan leaned forward. "When they find out what?" "That we don't have parents," Liam said quietly, his voice tightening. "Some people look at us different after that. Like we don't belong there." Jonathan's jaw clenched, but his voice remained steady. "You belong anywhere you want to be, Liam. And I'll make sure no one tells you otherwise." The boy didn't respond right away, but something in his expression softened. By mid-morning, Jonathan had walked them to the school himself. Teachers and the principal greeted them warmly, though Liam kept a protective arm around each twin. It was clear he wasn't ready to let go. Jonathan crouched to their level before leaving. "I'll be here at the end of the day to walk you home," he promised. The twins nodded, though their eyes lingered on him as he left. When Jonathan returned to his office, his assistant brought in a file. "Mr. Hale, about the background check you requested, I think you'll want to read this." Jonathan opened the folder. What he saw made his breath catch. It contained not only Liam's mother's death certificate, but also a police report from over a year ago, one that mentioned an unresolved case involving their father. According to the report, he hadn't abandoned them, he had disappeared. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, staring at the papers. If their father was alive, he might still be out there. But why had no one come for the children? Why had they been left on the streets? The questions gnawed at him for the rest of the day. When he picked the children up from school, the twins were smiling, holding new notebooks and crayons. But Liam seemed more reserved, as if he sensed something was shifting. Back at the apartment, Jonathan decided to keep the news to himself. For now. He didn't want to give them false hope until he knew the truth. That night, after the children had gone to bed, Jonathan stood at the window of his penthouse. The city lights glowing far below. He had the resources to find their father. But a part of him wondered, would that be the right thing? Or would it undo the fragile sense of safety they had just begun to feel? The decision weighed on him. And he knew he had to choose carefully. Because one wrong move could change everything. The next morning began like any other since the children had moved into the apartment. Liam woke first, quietly checking that his sisters were still asleep before stepping into the kitchen. There was cereal in the cupboard, milk in the fridge, things that still felt like luxuries to him. He poured 2 small bowls for Ella and Emma, placing them carefully on the table. Then, without touching anything for himself, he sat at the edge of his chair, listening for the familiar knock. Jonathan had stopped by every morning since they'd moved in, always with breakfast and a smile. Today, the knock came exactly on time. Jonathan stepped in dressed sharply as usual, but Liam noticed a tiredness in his eyes. Something he didn't comment on. "Morning, team," Jonathan said warmly. "Who's ready for school?" Ella and Emma raced to their room to get dressed, leaving Jonathan and Liam alone in the kitchen. "I have a meeting after I drop you off today," Jonathan said casually. "So I might be a little late picking you up. But don't worry. I'll be there." Liam nodded. He didn't ask what the meeting was about, but Jonathan knew the boy's sharp eyes had caught the weight in his voice. Truth was, Jonathan's meeting was with a private investigator. After reading the police report, he'd quietly hired someone to dig deeper into the disappearance of the children's father. It wasn't just curiosity. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, and if there was even a chance their father was alive. Liam deserved to know. The drive to school was filled with the twins, chatter about their new teacher, and the art project they'd started. Liam stayed quiet, but Jonathan caught the small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. It was the first sign that maybe, just maybe, the boy was starting to believe this life could last. When they arrived, Jonathan walked them to the front gate. "Remember," he told them, "no matter what happens today, you can always call me." The twins nodded, and Liam gave a small, serious nod of his own. Jonathan watched them disappear into the building, before heading to his meeting. Tutu, the private investigator, a woman named Carla, was already waiting at a quiet cafe downtown. She slid a folder across the table as Jonathan sat down. "I found something," she said without preamble. Inside the folder were photographs, grainy but recent, of a man who bore a strong resemblance to Liam. The most recent was dated just 3 weeks ago, taken in a small town about 2 hours from the city. "He's alive?" Jonathan asked, his voice low. Carla nodded. "But it's complicated. He's been in and out of trouble. Minor theft, loitering, nothing violent. Looks like he's been living rough for a while. No stable address. No sign he's tried to contact the kids." Oh, Jonathan's chest tightened. Could he even take care of them? "Honestly," Carla said, "from what I've seen, no. Not right now. But if he finds out they're here, he might try." Jonathan closed the folder. His instincts screamed that bringing this man back into the children's lives, without knowing the full picture, could destroy everything they'd begun to build. Still, he couldn't hide the truth forever. "Keep looking," he told Carla. "I need to know exactly who he is before I make any decisions." What? At the school, the day was unfolding normally, until lunchtime. Liam was sitting with his sisters, at the far end of the cafeteria, when 3 older boys approached. They were the kind of kids who looked for someone smaller to push around. "What's with the new kids?" one of them sneered. "I heard they don't even have parents. Bet they're living off handouts." Liam stiffened. "Leave us alone." The boy smirked. "Or what? You'll tell your rich babysitter." Ella's eyes filled with tears, and Emma shrank behind her brother. Liam stood, his fists clenched. But before he could say anything, one of the boys shoved him backward. His tray clattered to the floor, food spilling everywhere. The cafeteria went quiet. A teacher rushed over, pulling the boys apart and demanding explanations. The older kids claimed Liam had started it, but the twins quickly defended him. Still, the incident left a mark. Not just on Liam's shirt, but on his trust in this new environment. When Jonathan arrived later than usual to pick them up, he immediately sensed something was wrong. The twins were quiet, and Liam stared out the window during the entire ride home. "What happened?" Jonathan asked gently. "Nothing," Liam said quickly. Jonathan didn't push, not then. But after the twins had gone to bed, he found Liam sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at his hands. "It was about us, wasn't it?" Jonathan asked. "About not having parents." Liam's jaw tightened. "They said we're just charity. That you're only helping us because you feel sorry for us." Jonathan pulled out the chair across from him. "Do you believe that?" Liam's eyes met his. "I don't know what to believe." Jonathan leaned forward. "Liam, I'm not helping you because I pity you. I'm helping you because you matter. Because you and your sisters deserve safety, and love, and a future. And because when I look at you, I see someone who's fought harder than most grown men ever will." For a long moment, Liam said nothing. Then, almost too quietly to hear, he whispered, "I don't want to lose this." "You won't," Jonathan promised. Though in his heart, he knew that promise would be tested soon. Too later that night, as Jonathan was leaving, his phone buzzed. It was Carla. "I found something else," she said. "The father, he's coming to the city." Jonathan froze in the hallway. He looked back toward the apartment door, behind which Liam and the twins slept peacefully, unaware of the storm that might be heading their way. "Keep me updated," Jonathan said, his voice steady but cold. When he hung up, he realized the truth. The safe little world he'd built for them was more fragile than he'd ever imagined. And the clock was already ticking. Blue rain fell steadily against the city streets, blurring the glow of traffic lights into hazy halos. Jonathan stood at his office window, staring down at the slick pavement far below. His phone sat heavy in his hand, Carla's last words still ringing in his ears. "The father, he's coming to the city." It had been 3 days since she called, but each passing hour tightened the knot in Jonathan's chest. He hadn't told Liam or the twins. How could he? They'd only just begun to feel safe. The idea of shattering that fragile sense of security gnawed at him. Across town, in the small apartment, Liam was helping Ella and Emma finish their homework. The twins chattered as they colored in pictures for a school project, their crayons scattering across the table. Liam smiled faintly, but his mind was elsewhere. Something about Jonathan lately had felt off. Not unkind, but distracted, like he was carrying something heavy he couldn't share. The next morning, Jonathan arrived earlier than usual. He brought breakfast as always, but there was a quietness in him that even the twins noticed. "Are you okay?" Ella asked between bites of toast. Jonathan forced a smile. "Just a busy week at work." Liam studied him. He wanted to believe that explanation, but deep down he knew there was more. After breakfast, Jonathan drove them to school. But instead of heading straight to his office afterward, he took a detour. Carla was waiting in her car near the edge of town. "You were right," she said as soon as he stepped in. "He's here. Staying at a run-down motel off 5th Street. She handed Jonathan a photo taken just the night before. A man with sunken cheeks, a week's worth of stubble, and eyes that looked both tired and restless. Jonathan studied the picture. The resemblance to Liam was unmistakable. "Does he know the kids are here?" "Not yet," Carla replied. "But it won't take much for him to find out. I overheard him asking someone if there were shelters nearby. He's looking for them, Jonathan." Jonathan exhaled slowly. He couldn't decide which was worse, that the man wanted to take them or that he might be unfit to care for them if he did. 2. At school. The twins had settled into their new routines, but Liam kept glancing at the doors as if expecting someone to walk in. His unease grew when, during recess, the same older boys from before approached him again. Still living in that fancy place. One taunted. Bet your rich friend's getting tired of you already. Liam's fists clenched. But he remembered Jonathan's words about not letting others decide who you are. He turned away, guiding his sisters toward the playground. Still, the sting of their voices followed him. What he didn't notice was the man across the street. The same man from Carla's photo. Leaning casually against a lamppost, watching. His eyes followed Liam and the twins as they played. And though his expression was unreadable, there was something in it that made the air feel colder. That evening, Jonathan returned to pick them up. As they drove home, he caught sight of a figure disappearing into the crowd near the school gate. A flash of recognition went through him. The man from the photo. Jonathan gripped the steering wheel tighter. He didn't say anything to the children, but his mind was already moving fast. When they reached the apartment, he stayed longer than usual, sharing dinner and listening to the twins' stories about their day. Liam was quieter, but he didn't bring up the incident at recess. After the twins went to bed, Jonathan pulled Liam aside. You know you can tell me if something's bothering you, right? Liam hesitated. Then nodded. I don't want anything to change. Jonathan felt the weight of those words deep in his chest. He wished he could promise that nothing would. But the truth was, change was already on the way. Later that night, Jonathan met Carla again. He was at their school. Jonathan said without preamble. Carla's brows knit together. Then you don't have much time. He's making his move. Jonathan looked out at the rain-slick streets. If he tries to take them. He didn't finish the sentence. Carla leaned forward. You need to decide now, Jonathan. Do you confront him? Or do you find a way to keep him away? Jonathan's hands tightened into fists. I'll protect them. No matter what it takes. But even as he said it, he knew the confrontation was inevitable. And when it came, the truth would change everything. For him, for Liam, and for the twins. The morning began like any other. Or at least, that's how Jonathan tried to make it seem. The air was crisp, the sunlight spilling across the city in a golden haze. And the twins were giggling as they raced each other down the hall toward the breakfast table. Liam trailed behind them, still rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Jonathan greeted them with pancakes, extra syrup for Ella and Emma, just the way they liked. He kept his voice light, smiling at their chatter, but inside, he was a storm. He'd hardly slept. His mind replaying the moment he'd seen the man at the school gate. He knew today would be the day. By the time he dropped the kids at school, Jonathan had already made arrangements. Carla was watching from her car down the street, ready to step in if anything happened. He hated dragging her into this, but she was the only person he trusted. It happened just after lunch. Liam and the twins were walking toward the playground when a shadow fell over them. Liam? The voice froze him mid-step. He turned slowly, and there he was. The man from the photo. The man with his eyes. Liam's heart pounded. Do I know you? The man's expression softened. I'm your father. Ella and Emma glanced at each other, then at Liam. The twins didn't remember him. They'd been too young when he left. But they instinctively stepped closer to their brother. I've been looking for you. The man continued, his voice low and urgent. All of you. I want to take you home. Liam's breath caught. Home? We already have a home. The man's jaw tightened. With him. The rich guy. He's not your family. I am. Before Liam could answer, Jonathan appeared, his presence like a wall between them. They're not going anywhere with you. The man straightened, his voice rising. You think you can just keep them? You're not their father. Jonathan's tone was calm, but every word was edged with steel. And where were you when they were sleeping in bus stations? When they went hungry for days? When Liam carried his sisters door to door, begging strangers for food? The man's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant noise of children playing. Jonathan's voice dropped even lower. You had your chance. You left them. I won't let you hurt them again. Liam's thoughts were spinning. He'd dreamed about his father for years, wondering what it would be like to see him again. But now, standing between the man who had given him life, and the man who had given him everything else, the truth hit him with a clarity that stole his breath. Family wasn't about blood. It was about who stayed. Liam stepped forward, his small hand gripping Jonathan's. We're going home, he said firmly. And he didn't mean the man's. The twins followed without hesitation. The man watched them walk away, his face unreadable. For a moment, Jonathan thought he might lunge forward, but instead, he turned and disappeared into the crowd, swallowed by the city. That night, the apartment felt warmer than ever. The twins curled up on the couch, watching cartoons, while Liam helped Jonathan prepare dinner. For the first time in days, the tension in the air was gone. Halfway through the meal, Liam put down his fork. Jonathan. Yeah, thank you. For not giving up on us. Jonathan smiled. A quiet kind of smile that came from somewhere deep. You three saved me too. You know. The rest of the night passed in soft laughter and small moments. The kind that, stitched together, made a life. When the video of their story was eventually shared online, the poor little boy with twin sisters, begging for food, unknowingly approaching a rich CEO who changed their lives. Thousands of people watched, cried, and felt the spark of something good in the world. And maybe, just maybe, they believed a little more in kindness. If you're hearing this now, remember. There's always someone out there who needs your light. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Not just to the channel, but to the belief that one act of compassion can change everything. 2. Friends, if this story touched your heart, remember, even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's whole life. Your one click can help us bring more heart-touching stories to people who need hope. So, please, subscribe to our channel and join us in spreading kindness. Because your subscribe isn't just a number, it's a spark of hope.